Welcome to Pub and Porch, Applied Stoicism in Modern Life, hosted by Adam Piercy and Mick Mulroy. Okay, welcome back to Pub and Porch, Applied Stoicism. I'm Adam Piercy here with my co-host Mick Mulroy. Mick is coming from far afield from his home. I am coming from the blizzard-swept tundras of Canada. There's a large snow event happening here of about 40 centimeters expected. So it's about 16 inches is max what we'll see. Great for me though, because I'm a cross-country skier, and cross-country skiing does best on natural snow. So we have to be careful not to like, although I'm going to be locked inside all day, I have to be careful not to take into account the fact that we'll get good snow. So
I am in DC, where it is supposed to be 17 inches of snow today, which is unusual for here, which means the entire U.S. government is going to close down tomorrow, because I've actually been, when I was at the Pentagon, they closed down the government once because it was too windy. That's a true story. So I think sometimes people just look for reasons. But this is an actual reason.
Is it like, why is it like, does the wind like blow over the top and it like whistles? Like, is that kind of one of those things? That's, it's such a weird.
But this is for real. I mean, I live in Montana, as you know, so they don't close anything for snow. But I think a lot of places, to be fair, because a lot of people up north, I'm sure Canadians are kind of just baffled by the panic of snow. But I think a lot of it has to do with they don't have the same like equipment. Like they don't invest heavily in snow removal in Texas. Yeah. Right. So when it snows, it's just it's ice. And,
I tell this story. I tell this story sometimes about snow when I was in England. So England didn't get snow for a very long time. Back in the Dickensian era, Charles Dickens, when he wrote Christmas Carol, there's snow on the ground. It's like snowy London. People are like, it doesn't snow in London. It used to. And then when I was living there from 99 to 04, or 03, excuse me, it snowed there for the first time in like 20 years or something like that, right? And I remember watching this Mini Cooper, like an original Mini Cooper, and some of the old ones had like wheelbarrow tires. Like that was because it was a very low cost car.
Really?
It was like pirouetting through a roundabout on this, and there was like a film of snow. It was barely snow, right? And my father and I are kind of like, well, okay then. And it's just, I think it's an interesting thing. But one thing I'd remind people though when they come here, because I speak to a lot of people from all over the world, because when you work in the space program, right, you'll get people, expats from ESA or JAXA or NASA, right? They'll work for commercial interests eventually. And they're kind of like, well, how do you deal with it? And I said, well, the one thing you have to do is you have to get something to do outside, right? So I'm a cross-country skier. I'm a masters racer, cross-country skier here in Ontario. And it's that thing where it all of a sudden you have more freedom again, because if you view the snow as I don't go outside, you are locked in for 6 months of the year, right? And we're, of course, hockey's big. I think a lot of people disregard the fact that we do other things in Canada as well, like curling. My father's a curler. He curls in the citywide tournaments here in Ontario. But ultimately, it comes down to it that you have to do something. And I know you're a runner, but you do a winter sport, I think, right? You do.
My main sports, which is interesting because we were just looking up the early Stoics, as boxing and running. Right. So Cleanthes was a boxer, and then Chrysippus was a runner. Right. So kind of the the Irish sports, if you will. Those have always been my sports. I live in Montana and I know how to ski, but I'm not nothing to write home about. I do like AT skiing, which is like a version of cross-country skiing, right? It's just the skis that they use in the military. That's how I got familiar, because you can go downhill, lock your binders, and then you can go cross-country, if you will. They're just big, thick skis. Yeah. You need that because we teach, the military uses skis in operations, and my company teaches winter warfare to
Oh, okay.
the U.S. military. So
Oh, okay.
I have to be okay at that. I'm not as good as my
Sure.
business partner, who was damn near a Olympic skier. But
Now this is the one where do your skis have skins on the bottoms, so then you have to take them off to go down?
yep, you carry
Okay.
those
Okay.
skins. You
Yeah.
carry
Yeah.
them. You can put them on. So when you're going uphill,
Yeah.
you can go straight. You can go right up a hill like a pretty, depending on your
Yeah.
physical fitness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, you can go straight up a hill, then you get to the top, pop your skins off, lock your binders, and now you
Right.
have downhill skis.
Right.
All
And
terrain, I think, is what AD stand for.
yeah, and actually, my skis have a form of skin on them that doesn't come off, but it's similar to the skins you have on yours. So, but I'm a cross country skier, and I use skins because I don't need another set of tools to do waxing and everything. I said
Yeah,
forget that, I'm too old for that. But
yeah,
it ended up being one of those fun things. And interestingly, just to relate to your military thing, the second biggest winter sport in Europe behind hockey, ice hockey, is biathlon, which was invented
yes.
by the military.
Probably the
I think,
Norwegians, I'm guessing,
yeah, the
or the
Finns
Finns.
actually. With the Finns,
Finns,
yeah, it
yeah,
was
that would have been my second guess. Yep,
yeah, it was after the Russo-Finnish War started. It started in the
yep.
fall, and then it went into the winter because the Finns didn't give it up.
Mhm.
And then I think it was something they gave I'm getting this wrong, but they gave the Russians, or they were really Soviets. That's really what it was because they were from all over the Soviet Union. But they gave the Finns this nickname of something like "whistling death" or something like that because they would whoosh down the hill and shoot you, and like
Mhm.
it was terrifying,
Yes,
right?
yep.
Just
One of the
but
most famous snipers in history, Simo, was a
that's right.
Finnish, and he'd go on skis.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm a big biathlon fan. We were talking about this before because today we wanted to talk about sports and stoicism in sports.
Yes.
'Cause it's becoming quite prevalent today. But I don't watch North American sports, but we still see stoicism in uh, sports that are less prevalent in North America. I would say because being in Canada and the U.S., right, we're ruled. I would say ruled is the wrong term, but we are dominated in the industry by the one that like the major leagues, right? Baseball, hockey, basketball,
Football.
football, and golf. I
Yeah.
guess is the other big one, probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And we're talking about stoicism in sports, which is actually, we oftentimes talk about how the military has had such a prevalent connection to stoicism in science, I think, but also sports, right? Sports since the
Yes.
beginning. Um, and we already highlighted, right after Zeno. So the next two
Yeah.
leaders of the school of stoicism were athletes,
Yes.
boxer, and then long distance runner. But essentially, every time I've gone to, and both you and I go to Stoic events.
Hmm.
Um, every time I've gone to speak at a Stoic event, there's been an athlete there,
Yes.
and one I wanted to highlight, and I did forget his name, but I looked it up. His name was Nils van der Poel. Poel. He spoke at one of the events I was at. He was a Olympic skier, if I remember correctly, from the Netherlands,
Right.
speed skater. And his sport, which is really interesting, he starts his, not to steal his stuff, but we're highlighting him, so I feel it's okay.
Yeah. It's
Um,
okay.
he starts the conversation before he even starts. It's a series of beeps. It's like, and they're beep, 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 like that. It's just like, it's almost like sounds like one sound,
Yeah.
right? Then he says, the first beep and the second beep that all took less than a second to all beep is the difference between eighth place and first place.
Right.
So whether you are the winner, the gold medal recipient, or you came in eighth place, it's literally that short of a distance.
Right.
And he grew up with that. And he talked about how intense that was because,
Yeah.
a lot of sports, and you already referenced some sports, you can make a
Hmm.
mistake. Your teammates can, help you out, make up for you. It's not fatal, like any mistake. But
Right.
his sport, any mistake was fatal as far as winning, not fatal, like obviously, like they
Right.
take you out back and shoot you.
But fatal
So it
to
was
the
very fascinating because you never really think about it that way. How and I
right.
think he was somewhat of a child prodigy, and then everybody expected him to win Olympics. Uber amount of pressure on him. Uh, he beat himself up a lot, but then he found Stoicism, and he really focused on the principles of it when it came to the ability to be physically and mentally tough, to have the discipline to do the needful, and to let go of the things he really couldn't control. And in his version, that was, I'm going to do everything the best I can, and if I win, I win, and if I don't, I don't. And I know that's a simple thing to say, but he believed that his over focused on what's going to happen caused him to make the mistakes. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm paraphrasing all the stuff he says, so I don't mean to be stealing his story, but I think it's important. And, obviously he wouldn't be telling a story if he didn't win the gold medal, right? And it came in eighth.
Yeah.
No. But, and then another one that I wanted to highlight, and I think we should go back to talk about how this has been prevalent throughout our history, with whether it's Rufus or Rufus Musonius, etc. We just talked about is Fernando Mendoza, right? So the Heisman Trophy winner, college football player, and MVP, and national champion, and probably go first in the draft, is not just an example of what we like in Stoicism. He's a Stoic. Like, this guy talks about his New York Times article written about it. And there's something about the ethics, the work ethic, that I think Stoic imparts on its followers, if you will, that really makes it keen for athletes at the highest level. He's a great example, but and there's plenty of boxers that will say the same thing. I also was at another Stoic conference, a guy named Pat Cash. He was an Australian. He won Wimbledon. Yep. Right. Wimbledon champion, Australia. Again, not to steal a story, but I will. He admittedly had a huge temper.
Yeah.
A lot of I don't know why tennis players seems to have a huge temper, right? But McEnroe's and all this stuff. He had a huge temper, and one day his coach came in and he said, "Look, man, your temper is actually going to keep you from succeeding, like being as good as you can, because you're really, really an awesome tennis player." Yeah. And he said something about, you need to really listen to the Stoicism. And in my experience, a lot of people are resistant to like new age therapy. I'm not saying they should, they are. But when you say Stoicism, they go, "Oh, you mean the philosophy that's been with Western civilization since the founding of democracy?" Yeah, that. They go, "Okay, I'll give it a try," right? Because it's not a flash in the pan. It's not, it's not some new age thing. But he resisted. So he gets up and he goes, "F you," runs to his room, slams his door so hard that his picture of McEnroe falls to the floor and shatters, because it had a glass thing. And then he looked at himself in the mirror and said, "Well, maybe I do have a problem with my temper," right? And then, long story short, went back to his coach and said, "Yeah, maybe I should listen to you on this Stoicism thing." And he attributed it to his victory at Wimbledon. So just some of the experiences I've had, and of course we've all seen, like Fernando Mendoza, with the current connection of Stoicism and the highest level of athleticism. All these things.
Yeah. And I think the interesting thing about Stoicism is, I think it has a universal applicability to no matter the kind of sport, right? Like so we'll say that American football and Australian football and rugby, right? They're all contact sports, right?
Absolutely.
And I was a rugby player in the UK for a long time, and I played when I came back here. And actually, what I found here when I returned what I found here in Canada when I returned actually made me quit the sport, because of just the way that we were being treated. But the thing is it applies to contact sports, and then you have combat sports, right? Which we talk about. and then other sports as well, like endurance sports. And it's also, it's not right now, it feels like it's very North American centric, this idea, right? But it's because of the Ryan Holidays and the, Donald and Massimo's in New York, right, and all of that. But ultimately, like, it applies to endurance sports as well, and it's been applied outside of North
Oh
America
yeah.
a lot. And
Oh,
I feel so bad. I can't remember his name, and I was trying to find it. But there is a famous Norwegian cross country skier who actually I used to like root for, and for some reason I'm blanking on his name. And this was a few years ago. Now he retired, but he was a Daily Stoic reader and journaler, and he used to say that what Stoicism gave him, right, like when you and I talk about boxing, right, it's like that. You have to understand that you will take a hit. You have to get used to the idea
yep.
that you're going to get hit. But then in
Mhm.
endurance sports, you don't have an opponent that way. Many times you're racing the clock, right? Especially if you're doing what's called a pursuit or an interval start, where you're basically on the course by yourself with other people skiing around you, but it's all on time. And you don't have an opponent, but at the same time, right? In some ways, I feel like that almost is more, not more, but just it takes certain parts of Stoicism on more, because it's like you're racing against yourself. It's how hard you can push yourself. Have you done the preparation? Is your mental resilience there? And that comes up a lot. And um, this skier he was an Olympic medalist, and
Mhm.
it's really interesting to me because you kind of go like, because I think some people think Stoicism is because of how much it's relational. It's always like, the story is told of when um someone is I think I can't remember who it is, but he gets punched in the face, and then someone goes to apologize, and he says, "Oh, it's okay. There was no harm. There
Yep.
was no harmful act done." Right. And that is a clear example. But there's this other example of just like, this is the obstacle is the way is a great example for me. Like when you got to climb that hill on
Mhm.
cross country skis, and there's a big one at the end of the Tour de Ski at a place called Val di Fiemme, where it's like a 30 or 40 degree climb for about 15 minutes straight. It's so
Mhm.
steep they have to snake you up the hill like in this curving
Mhm.
snake. And when the skiers talk about that, they're kind of like, people are like, "What's your mindset around it?" And I remember this one skier, he said, "Well, you kind of just start and then you finish it. Like it's just there. You kind of just do it, right?" And
Mhm.
I remember thinking that felt so stoic to me, in that sense of like, well, I could complain that there's a hill, or I could just do the hill. Like it's over in 15 minutes, right? This is
Yep.
the obstacle. That's the way I must go. And it's always interesting to me. You see a lot about people when you watch them climb a
Yep.
hill like that on cross
Yep.
country skis, where you're like, wow, that is like, it's at some, like, even the top skiers in the world. So you're Jessie Diggins who's American actually, and she's the world number one right now, or Johannes Hosflot Kleibo, who is the men's tour leader right now, and they both won their Tour de Skis as well. They're walking up that hill. Like they don't look graceful at it, but they're walking up that hill and they're doing it because that's the obstacle. And I think that
Mhm.
that's the key thing that I love about Stoicism. Like you could you could take a Rocky quote and say, like, there's a Rocky quote that a lot of people use now, which is like, it's not about it's about getting hit and being able to keep moving forward. But I don't think that
Oh, the
that's
quote. The
right.
quote is, "It's not whether you get knocked down; it's whether you get back up." In
Right.
fact, I used to have a boxing coach who, when people came in to see if they liked boxing, right?
Yeah.
They always
Yeah.
come in swinging for the hills, right? Like, and they always burn out. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Boxing is it's an endurance sport as much as anything else.
Hmm.
He'd always just, I'd say, "What do you look for? Do you look for like speed? Do you look for like how strong the person is?" He would say, "I just look how fast they get back up.
Yeah.
Those are the guys I want, or
Yeah.
gals. Now
Yeah.
it's females are into boxing too, but back then they weren't." But he goes, "I can make a guy fast. I can make a guy strong. I can make a guy skilled, but I can't make a guy get back up,
Right.
like an
Yeah.
internal thing." And that's where Stoicism, I think, is at its strongest. It's
Yeah.
this will to endure
Yeah.
that I think it really imparts in us. And if you look at Rufus, I already mentioned him, Musenius
Yeah.
Rufus, he talks a lot. It's like the intersection of the military and sports, where he's
Hmm.
talking about like you have an obligation to be prepared physically and mentally.
Right.
And he actually pushes Stoics, or I guess anybody that's listening to him, to challenge themselves physically, to be ready to, climb that mountain
Yeah.
or fight a monster or what have you. Um, and not to wait to be prepared now. It's really a call, like for the endurances sports of the world, to those who are going to go into, whether you're a ranger, a SEAL, or Marine, what have you, or a Green
Right.
Beret,
Right.
or whether you're going to be a boxer, a rugby player, a cross country skier.
Yeah.
That's kind of the intersection, because at least from my perspective on Stoicism, because he
Yeah.
talks about it, not just as a, oh, you'll be healthy and you'll live longer. It's like almost like an obligation. Like you
Yeah.
have to. We're not all going to be Olympic athletes. I sure the hell
No.
wasn't.
No.
Right? As one time my dad mentioned for me, I come from a long line of half-ass boxers. But you can be to steal from the army, be all you can be, right? You can be better than you are
Right.
now,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Morally, ethically, and physically. So
Yes.
challenge yourself, right?
And I think that's the obligation we have, right? Like in the ancient times, right? You learned a lot about people because the threat of violence was always so near, right? It was either like in the early days, right? In the Punic Wars, or sorry, the Peloponnesian Wars, excuse me, right? Like it's
Yeah.
literally the next you in the next town over, right? And then that you have threats
Very
from the
physical.
Persians. Exactly, you have threats from the Persians, and then even in Roman times, right? Like until it wasn't until later in the Roman Republican era, right, that after the Punic Wars, that they finally had some sort of quiet times on the peninsula. But before that, right, it's like Hannibal's showing up, and then there's the Gauls, and there's the other guys, right? And you're like,
Mhm.
geez, like. So the thing is, in those times, you are getting tested all the time, and I'm not saying that's a better time to be in, but what I'm saying is the obligation for us is to find out who we are, and I think the obligation is to do the hard things, right?
Mhm.
Stephen Magnus has this great book called "Do Hard Things," and he talks about it in the sense of like you teach yourself in your mind that you can do more than you think you can. Most of the time with endurance sports, for example, when people hit 40% of their maximum effort, they start to crumble. So
Mhm.
you're not even at the halfway point. But those people like the Klybos and the Diggins and the Carlsons and the Bjorn Dollies of the 90s and everything, when they push, they are pushing into maybe 55 or 60% of their total. They're never getting to 90 or 100%, right? But it's because their mind, when they start, like we all do, is it doesn't want to feel pain. It doesn't want to have to do effort. And I think, it's an obligation of us as Stoics to do things like sport, to do things like put these efforts in, because it teaches us about ourselves and it helps build our resilience. Because, especially people like yourself, me, people from the Western world, we're in relatively peaceful times. I don't wish to go out and fight somebody. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm
Mhm.
saying is, you have this obligation with, to do hard things, to learn about yourself and others, because it's your responsibility to take care of yourself. And I think
That's
that's a
right.
key thing here, right?
You hit a good point, Adam. So the way I view it as martial fitness too, in the sense that you shouldn't be looking to go out and fight somebody, but you should also be able to defend yourself and others,
Sure.
right?
Yes.
Right. And that's part of it.
Yeah.
That's part of it. It's part of it. If you're not ready to defend yourself and others, then somebody else has to.
Yes.
Right. So, and here's a quote I got from Musonius Rufus. We ought
Hmm.
to train the body by hardships and difficulties, so it may be strong for the service of the soul. I like that one.
Right.
That really, I think, that's why I'm saying it's not just in athletics, and I think you already mentioned this. In a way, especially early on, it was a means of preparing for warfare. It
Yeah.
really was.
Yeah.
So if you
Yeah.
look at all the wrestling, the boxing, you look at track and field, right? The original sports, throwing
Yeah.
the javelin, the shot put. I mean, it's all about being prepared for martial service, and then
Absolutely.
football, rugby. You can see directly football and rugby, at least American
Yes.
football.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
it is to prepare, and that's not to highlight that we should want to go to war or anything like that.
No. No.
But one of the quickest ways to go to war is not be prepared to go to war, because people will find you vulnerable and take the opportunity. And I think sports
Totally.
does prepare And one thing that I would say in the U.S., as I'm sure it's other places, but I think I feel confident saying it in the U.S. is sports has become very cliquish in the
Right.
sense that in the old days, everybody was a little athlete, right?
Right.
Everybody played sports. PT was actually real. Like you had to climb a rope and do push-ups and run a
Right.
mile, like every
Go
kid,
go over that
right?
wall thing.
Yeah,
You have to climb the
every kid,
wall.
right?
Yeah.
Now you got these mega schools in the
Mm,
US where a fraction play sports and nobody else
right.
does.
Yeah.
And PT's a joke. If you say you don't want to do it, then your parents will come in and say, it's torture for my kid to run a mile. And so they just say, okay, well, hell, you just sit on the sidelines and don't do anything. So we end up with, uh, in the US, and I'll criticize my own country a little bit here, some of the best athletes in the world and some of the worst shaped people in the world
Yeah.
right next to each
Very
other,
it's very
right?
but
I mean,
dichotomous,
it's
yeah.
true. Like
No,
you'll say,
yeah.
like, look at the Olympics and you'll go, wow, you guys got great athletes. And then you look at tourists and you'll go, why is
Wow.
everybody 45 pounds overweight?
Yeah.
And I'm not picking on overweight people,
Yeah, but
but
it's a
it's not healthy,
mm,
right?
yeah.
Uh, and it also does not. And then, for my line of work, the military's like, they can barely find young people physically qualified to serve in the military.
Right.
They've never been asked to run a mile. They've never been told do push-ups and I'm going to count them,
Right.
right? Uh, it's become an issue in society that not only makes you less prepared, for your defense, but that's just one section of society, but
Yeah.
also much more unhealthy, which is bad for everybody, bad for
Right.
society, especially in a place like Canada where you have, uh, your medical system is for everybody, which is great, but um, that
It
really
does,
does
but
require
yeah.
people to be physically care
Yeah.
about their own
Yeah.
physical fitness, right?
Yeah.
At least to a certain extent. And it's not. So anyway, my point being
No, I
is
get it.
stoicism is for society. Physical fitness isn't just for those that are going to compete in the Olympics. It should
Right.
be for everybody. It's for the benefit of everybody.
Yeah. But I think though there's even just a straight up practical application to it. When I was playing rugby, um, we had three coaches. Two of them were from the north, like from Manchester, Liverpool area, or no, Manchester, Newcastle, and one of them was from Wales, which technically is north of where we were.
Yep.
And they used to have this phrase they always said, which was "head in the ice box, heart in the oven." And I've said this on the
Right on.
podcast before, but I think
Mhm.
sport is one of those things where it's a crucible that kind of burns away the fake and the facade that you can have in your life. You can say, like, I've been to parties where people are like, "Oh, Adam, this guy reads Marcus Aurelius," and you meet him, and you talk to this person, you go, "Well, he reads it. I don't think he understands it, right?" And so the practical application of that, like if you're like one thing that I have found quite disheartening in rugby, it's one of the few sports I do watch a lot,
I
is
love rugby.
the yeah, but for me the problem I have is the number of times that international rugby players are throwing punches again. And we went through that in the mid 2000s, then they got rid of it again, and then it came back. Excuse me. And I struggle with violence in sports like that. And I'm not talking like in MMA, it's a controlled thing, for example. I'm not going to get on that because that combat sports have been part of our history since humans have been humans. But
Mhm.
to have something in rugby where like what I want to see is the guy where he takes a high tackle or somebody accidentally throws a forearm where they're not supposed to. And I want to see the guy who doesn't respond to that. I want to see the guy
Mhm.
who says like this is like rugby is sort of controlled chaos, right? There's this
Mhm.
joke that rugby is a game for hooligans played by gentlemen and footballs like
Soccer. Yeah,
soccer
yeah,
soccer is a
yeah,
game for
yeah.
gentlemen played by hooligans, right? And I,
Yep.
and I don't like football, but I'm not gonna like soccer, but that's because I just don't like it because it's boring to me. But the
Yeah.
melee on a field of rugby, when you have the matches where there's no yellow card, there's no red card, there's very few penalties, the game is flowing. To me, there's a
Right.
beauty in that because you have
Yep.
people who they take the hit and they play the game. There's
Yep.
no random fists. There's no we used to call it comparing shirt material where you're holding people's, you
Right.
grab somebody's jersey, right? I'm Canadian, so we call them jerseys, right?
Right.
So, but I struggle with that, right? And so I think, and even in North American sports, right? I'll take hockey. I'm Canadian. I cannot watch hockey anymore. There's way too much fighting, and so many people feel like that's part of the game. And there was an interesting thing if you read that. There's a book called Why Honor Matters where they actually talk about hockey and how it's an honor thing with the fighting. I still believe the fighting is wrong. That's not because I'm a pacifist. It's because I'm there to watch them play hockey. I'm not there to watch them fight. And I believe it's that thing. Now, if somebody does do something really inappropriate and you step in to defend your team, that's one thing. And in rugby, I would
Yeah.
say it's the same. But in rugby, I've seen it a lot where it's like, I was watching this one match and there's a ruck was formed, which is where you fight over the ball. And
Mhm.
this one guy who was coming into the ruck, he put his foot down, and there was somebody's hand was like sticking out of the ruck, and he stepped on it. And the guy from the opposing team saw this one player step on his teammate's hand, and he just started throwing punches. And I was like,
Mhm.
there's 8 guys rolling around on the floor. Like, calm down. Like, it's just, this
Mhm.
is part of the game. And I think that's a really interesting thing for me, right? Is because sport tells you, because it burns away all of that stuff where you can say, oh yes, I read philosophy and all that. It takes all of
Mhm.
that away. And those split second responses that we have as human beings, it tells us where we are on the barometer
Mhm.
of our progress as growing up, as maturing, as doing things. And I think that's really important. It's a very long-winded way to get there, but ultimately, like, those phrases like head in the icebox, heart in the oven, or, it doesn't matter about getting hit, it's about getting up and moving forward,
Mhm.
I think is really, those things to me are incredibly important because we don't see the tests every day like we would have when we lived in a cave, and the next tribe over that you could see across the valley might come and take
Mhm.
all your food or children or something like that,
So
right?
I actually did play rugby. It wasn't big in the South. It is now, in college. And one of the things that really kind of stood out to me, and
Yeah.
I think you know much more about international rugby,
Yeah.
is that at least where I played, almost it was almost as important the party that the host team
That's right.
threw
Yeah.
after the game
Yeah.
than whether you won or lost. I
Yes.
mean, they definitely were super competitive. Don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
that's the only sport I've ever been involved with or seen where
Yeah.
it goes from like this super like almost warfare to come over to my house and drink
Yes.
my beer and eat my burgers, and we're going to show you
Yeah.
our pride is almost as attached to how well we treat our adversary after the game as
Yes.
it was how we competed. I don't know if that's actually an international thing. I know this
Oh,
is a
that totally
podcast
is.
about
Oh,
rugby,
yeah.
but I always wanted to ask that because
No,
it
there is
certainly
no.
was something I played.
That Yeah, there's two things I always try to remember when it comes to rugby, right? Which is the first thing, because I'll get that out of the way, is the referee's name is Sir.
Mm,
Shut up.
I like that.
You get a penalty.
Mhm.
The captains are allowed to talk to him, and there's a very famous interaction with a very famous referee named Nigel Owens, where one of the captains goes on too long, and Nigel looks at him and he goes, I think it was a guy, I think his name was Jeremy, but this captain is just yammering on about, I disagree with this call, and the ref just looks at him, he goes, Jeremy, and Jeremy goes, yes sir, and he walks right away. I should find this clip for you, Vic. You love this clip. But that's the thing, right? Is you
Sorry,
understand that
sounds like a
that's the
Marine.
Exactly. But the thing is that's the call of the game, and you have to move on and go forward with it. But the other thing is this camaraderie that you get, right? Which again relies on the idea that it's part of the game. It is just like, no one here is evil, right? They're trying to do what's right for the game, for their team, for their country, whatever it is. But the we always had, like, when I played schools rugby in the UK, we always had a meal after the match with the opposing team. It's a little weird when you first do it if you've never done it before, because
Mhm.
I was a lot bigger in high school, like 200 pounds and wide enough that I had to like walk sideways through doors. And I was a hooker or a prop, so I was in the front of the scrum. And
Yep.
that's the one where you're looking across at a guy, you're looking at this guy, and your head's supposed to go there, and his head's supposed
Mhm.
to go there.
Yep.
And then the 16 young men, I'll say, literally run into each other, right? And if you mess it up, right, you can get penalized or you can really injure somebody. And then 90, maybe 120 minutes later, you're in a school cafeteria at a public school in England, and you're like eating beans and toast because they're feeding you, and you're
Yep.
looking you're looking at this guy who just recently wanted to mash your face in and scrum.
Right.
And it feels weird at first, and then you do have this realization of like, well, they're just people, right? And they're trying to sort this
Yeah.
out. I think,
And this is, after all, not
you know,
combat. It is a
no,
sport.
it is
And
a
it shows you
sport, right?
discipline. It shows you discipline.
Absolutely.
And I
Yeah.
really like
But
that aspect. It's too bad that wasn't the case in other sports.
well, you know what's interesting though too is I think it's important to say that you have to remember that that's going to occur as well, that you're going to see this person after the match as well. And it's important to remember that, because it's easy to disregard it as like, well, everybody's really nice in rugby. No, there are hooligans in rugby. There are
Mhm.
bruisers and bashers in rugby. There's a very famous Canadian who I will never be proud that he was part of our national squad, but he would get in all these fights, and then he'd go to the aftermatch drinks, and he'd like punch five of the guys there. And it's not what I'm trying to say is the guys there wouldn't like attack him or something, but I think he's on the carpet to have to answer for the fact that like he really wasn't playing rugby. He was faking it, and he was really just there
Mhm.
to fight. And I think there's something there as well, right? And that's, you have to call yourself into accountability to say like, did I do right by the team, by the game, by this?
Mhm.
It's like a social contract. Like, we're going to hit each other, but we're going to do it in a controlled way. In fact, it's one of the things that I find challenging with football is it doesn't seem like American football, I should say, is it doesn't seem like there's as much reliance on appropriate tackling technique. In rugby, the first thing you learn is how to hit somebody safely, not just so that you
Oh, yeah,
don't get
'cause you
injured,
don't
but
have
so that you
you don't
don't
have the
injure them.
helmet and the yeah,
That's
totally.
right. That's right. Because
Yeah.
and that's the thing. There's this social contract between me and the other guy that I'm going to tackle him correctly, which
Mhm.
would be right, so that it will reduce the chances of him being injured all over the place. And
Mhm.
there's that's something that I think is really important, to hold into account. And I think a lot of sport does have this, right? We talk a lot about rugby. It's an easy one. It's because it's a contact sport that has had some combat in it, I think. But I think
It's a
sport
very
in
stoic
general,
sport,
yeah. But
as is
even then,
boxing.
I think all of them can have it, though, right?
Yeah.
I think it's different things that we take. Endurance sports tell you to push harder.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Combat sports make sure that you get up afterwards. But I do think that obligation we're talking about it runs through all of them. You've got to try. You have to push yourself through something hard, right? Like Ryan Holiday talks about, I don't know, ice baths or running or swimming or something like that.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying that it has to be that, but you have to. You're
There's nothing wrong
basically
with that.
checking in on yourself, right?
Yep. I mean,
So
when it comes to ice baths, I know we kind of make fun because a lot of people seem to start and end with ice baths when it comes to stoicism. But
yeah,
I
yeah, I
would
know.
say this for them, you know, when we do winter training, one of the things
Yeah,
that they do is they break the ice and make you drop yourself into it, right?
right.
And you're like, what is this, some marine shit just to like torture a person? Well, yeah, probably, but the idea that you have done it and you have endured it gives you a confidence level going
Yes,
forward that if it happens by accident, that's the whole point, that
yes,
you've been there before, right? And you don't
yeah,
panic, right? You realize, okay, I need to get out of this. I'm going to start not being able to move well. I'm going to start thinking
right.
stupidly. I need to get all of my stuff, get into a sleeping bag. If you have to, jump in with somebody else, all that stuff.
Yeah,
It is to already prepare yourself. And I think that's what Rufus was talking about. That's why I just brought it up.
yes.
I
Oh
think
yeah,
he's saying, you've pushed yourself, not stupidly,
yeah,
physically, mentally, cold, heat, not eating, right? All these
yes,
things, because then you can deal with it. Like you take the average person in modern society and you tell them they can't eat for a day, they freaking panic. They totally
yeah,
panic,
yeah.
right? When it turns out you can go 3 weeks without eating. Believe me, I do humanitarian aid around the world. You can. It's not good, but you can, right?
Right,
But you take a person in a modern world, and by God, they miss a meal and they think they're going to die, right? So it's part of what I think um,
right.
Rufus was talking about when it's talking about
Yes,
pushing yourself physically and mentally. It's not
yeah,
just the sports aspect and the athletic aspect, but also I wanted to bring out a point that with our favorite, or many people's favorite Stoic, Aurelius. He grew up. He did pankration. It's the boxing
Yeah,
wrestling.
it's a mixture of wrestling and boxing. It's kind of like MMA from back in the
Yeah,
day.
I think it's the original MMA, right?
Yeah.
But one thing I always took from it when I read about him doing that is whether you're an aristocrat or a peasant,
Yes.
sports is the ultimate um,
Equalizer.
equalizer,
Yeah.
right? That's what I used to be told about boxing.
Yeah.
Like half the boxers come out of prison, man, right? So you didn't have to go to some fancy pants school. I'm not dissing boxing at all,
Yeah, yeah.
obviously. I'm just saying that, like, it's not, who your parents were, whether you're wealthy or whether you went to a fancy
Right.
university. If you can box and you win, then you are the champion. So it's a very equalizing sport.
Yes.
And Aurelius, I think, learned a lot from that, right? It didn't matter that he was an aristocratic Roman. Uh,
Right.
you got in the ring and did pancrazio and you got your tooth knocked out, you got your tooth knocked out, right? So I do think that's another thing for people of all different economic strata when they're thinking about raising their kids. And we should do, I
Yeah.
think, multiple episodes on that.
Yeah.
Um, Sports is an equalizer, and it's important
Yes,
for
it is.
kids to realize that it's their talents, not their,
Yeah.
anything else that
Well,
they should really hone.
yeah, and I think, as probably a closing thought, right? Marcus actually takes the idea that he has learned from his past, that he has learned from these difficult things he's endured, and he actually writes about it in the Meditations. And I'll butcher the quote, but I will say he basically tells himself, he says, so you've done hard things, right? You've worked, you've had to overcome something in the past, right? Um, Great. Does it mean that you will always succeed now? No, but it does mean that you can endure it. You can make it through it, right? You've done this before, and you have to remind yourself that you've done it before. And that's kind of what we're talking about, right? The mind, I will say the soul, I am not religious, I am spiritual in a way, but the mind, the soul, your heart, they are muscles, literally and figuratively, that can be trained into being bigger and better than they were before. And I think that's something that Marcus takes very keenly as he goes into this. When he's fighting the Marcomanni on the ice on the Danube, he's remembering that, like, I've done this before, right? And he's
Mhm.
reminding his troops, we've fought this before. You are Roman legionnaires. You know what you're doing here, right? And I think that's what we should all take away from this, right? Life is a series of lessons in many ways. And when we do these tough things, we have to take them as lessons, whether we win or lose. Anyways, that's
Absolutely.
my waxing rhapsodic at the end. So, but let's wrap up there. I think this is a great episode where I would say you and I are probably both really hoping to hear from the audience in the comments or email. You can find everything in the show notes for sure. But excuse me, info@pubandporch.com is our email. And, but we'd love to hear from you all, your experience with sport and your view of stoicism in sport today. I think we see it a lot more. So do you have any closing thoughts for us on this topic, Mick?
Well, if you're looking for some motivational speeches, I would recommend Teddy Atlas. He's a famous boxing coach.
Mm.
I'm telling you, even if you don't box, you just, as soon as you watch one, of course, the algorithm will send you 1,000. But it's like, I mean, they're real gut wrenching, and ultimately, it is not about whether you get knocked down. You will get knocked down. It's about whether you get back up, and that, I think, is not just the key to sports; it's the key to life, and that's where I'd leave that one.
Yeah, great. I would say one thing is there's a famous rugby speech by a man named Jim Telfer, and he's giving it to the British and Irish Lions. And I would say look that up online. It's not for the faint of heart, but it is a great speech. So thank
Put it in the bottom.
yeah, we'll put it in the show
Yeah.
notes. Yeah. Teddy Allen, is that right? And
Atlas. Like,
Teddy Atlas and Jim Telfer. I'll put those together for them. All right. Well, thanks, Mick. This is a great one. So we'll hear you on the next one. Cheers.
Sláinte. Thank you for listening to the Pup and Porch podcast. If you'd like to find out more about the podcast or its host, head over to pubandporch.com, and you can listen to all our episodes on Spotify, Apple, or whichever platform you prefer. And if you'd like to help out with the podcast, you can find us on Patreon. Drop us an email if you have a comment on any past episode, you have a suggestion for future episodes, or you have an essay on an important topic for Stoicism. Send it to us, and then we can be reached at info@pubandporch.com. Today's music was provided by bensound.com. Until next time, Pub and Porch out.